Hello, welcome to Win Some, Lose More Top 50. I'm Dieter Loosemore. This is my brother Rick, who's joined me. We've done the first two sections and we're now on 30 to 21. I've decided to change location to see how things work out, because obviously you have to have board games in the background, and my collection has been trimmed over. Well, don't have to. I do.
I'm not the host. I'm not the host.
No. Hopefully you've seen the first two. If not, and you're joining us now, welcome. This is the top 30 now, 30 to 21. Let's just jump straight in. Rick, what is your number 30?
My number 30, I think it's climbed. Yep, climbed 13 places. On tour, continue to have success with this, which is effectively a bingo roll and write. Two words that I'm not interested in, to be honest, in game design. But this seems to do a little bit more than your standard roll and write, which is, cross things off a sheet and try and achieve the right thing. And I know there are variations of that. You think about something like Railroad Ink, which is way down my list, and other things like that. But this is about creating a tour map for a band. Nominally, you roll a 46 with two 10-sided dice, and a 4 and a 6, and you also then roll a 6 and a 4, and you have to nominally put Pittsburgh, say you're in day 46, and Vancouver you're in day 64. I'm not sure that's even on the map, because it's the wrong country. But that's the idea, and then you try and create the best route you possibly could. And I've just played it, and we talked right at the beginning, didn't we, about our justification for some of these, and as if we have to justify ourselves to you, we can say what we like, but no, we do. Why is it that high? Why is it 30? Is it particularly complicated? No. Is it one of my favorite games? Actually, no. Does it get played? Does it get pulled off the shelf? Yes. And that probably tells you something about how much I like it and how much I want to play it with people. So decent game. You quite enjoyed it, didn't you?
Yes. It takes almost a play to get how to play, because mechanically very simple, but you have to get it wrong to know what you're aiming for.
Yes, and I'll come back to that point when I get to my number 25.
Cool. My number 30 is number 30 from last year. Unmoved. I've got two unmoved this year. So my 30 will hark back to my 50, which was Spirits of the Forest. I said it's my kind of go-to solo game when I want very little to have to think about and just have an activity for a little bit. If I want the next step up, this is McKee. This is a solo-only game that I've talked about loads. I seem to be one of the few that do. It's a worker placement, which, worker placement's largely played out for me in the traditional, you put all your pieces out, you resolve them, you bring them back. You put all your pieces out, you bring them back. But it does that, but it's just because it's quick, because it's a solo game, because the aesthetic just works for me. It's something really cool about it. It's just one I keep coming back to, and I got the little expansion deck that they did just to throw some more missions in. You're essentially the French resistance in World War II, which is just an interesting theme. It's not one you would think of as like a common, obvious theme. And it's just fun to try and manipulate those things. I probably only win about 40% of the time, but I kind of like that because there's a sense of challenge and something to want to come back to. So McKee holds steady for me. In the grand scheme of new entries, it's gone up maybe slightly, but it's about the same. It's held around here in the 3 or 4 years that I've had it. So McKee, number 30.
Great. Well, my number 29 was 30 last year, so holding pretty steady. And it's gone up just one place because it is just one.
Lovely.
Yeah, that worked out very well, didn't it? You talked about this last time, but effectively it's a party game. It's a word game. A team have access to one word, just one word, and then they have to give a one-word clue, and they all write something on their little easel to the other person in their team, and they can write, say it's grass, and you write green, mud, or words that are trying to lawnmower, something that's associated with it. But if you ever have any crossovers, then those get deleted. Oh, he wrote lawnmower, I wrote lawnmower as well, and so then all that gets left is green, and everyone, and then the person has to guess off green bogeys. I don't know, and so And it also we didn't say this last time, but I know we both think it shouldn't work because there's no competition. It's all about just beating your best score as a team, which holds no interest for me except that in this instance it's fun.
Yeah.
So number 29 is just one for me.
I think it helps in this particular instance that it is as much an activity as a game, so that you don't have to do we play 13 words and see how many of them we get.
Yes.
It's just we go until we feel like doing something else, and it's just each round is fun and kind of its self-enclosed game activity type thing. So it just works really well. My 29 is up 12 places, and unlike all the ones I said in the last list that I think were trending down, this one is certainly trending up for me. I believe it will be higher for you. And why I kept quiet when you talked about Camel Up, because this is the Camel Up killer for me. We'll see what you say about it. This is Downforce. This is a racing game, but super simple. We're just playing cards. And you, again, you do have a color or a couple of cards, depending on how many players, that is yours, but your cards that you play have speeds or distances for multiple cards, not just yours, sometimes not yours at all, and sometimes white or blank. So you get to choose what color it's associated with, and you have to resolve them in a certain order. And so you're trying to block people and move things at certain times. And then why it's kind of in the same camp as Camel Up, you've got those 3 betting points around the track. Who's going to win, and you don't have to pick you. You're not. It's as much a betting game as a racing game, in that you can win without your car having won because you spent the right amount at the beginning or gambled the amount that you want to, because you auction off the cars at the beginning. Almost the least interesting part, but it's interesting then how often that counts for some wins. Sometimes how savvy you are at that opening. Special powers, we'll hear about it, I'm sure, later. But there's an app that our other brother showed me when I was playing it with them. That is the score pad, so you don't have to write it down each time, and so it just does all that, and then it keeps the betting more secret, and so you don't have to use that. It comes with a pad of paper. Rambling, great fun, way more fun than it should be. You look at it and you go, yeah, it'll be all right. You play it, this is great fun. So Downforce was 41, now 29.
Okay, well, you talked about a Camel Up killer, and it was on my Camel Up was in my last list, so clearly it's not been killed, the one before I forget, but it's not been killed for me, but it certainly has been knocked back a few paces. If I've got one sort of 6-player fun party-ish game with a bit of thinking, Downforce is probably a next step. But my next game, which I have to tell you has climbed 93 places since we last did this.
Gosh.
Yes, this is Cult Express. I never thought it was going to be on this list because I played it years ago, and I think we've probably played it wrong now that I've played it again, and now I understand it a little bit better. But this is a programming game. Again, neither you or I like programming. It's got a lovely 3D train, and I always wanted to like it. But it's always just been a bit zany, a bit, and like I didn't really know how to get into it. But I was given it as a gift for my birthday 2.5 years ago, and then it was a pandemic, so I didn't bother playing it, and it stayed in its shrink. And then finally, about a year ago or so, finally I was like, okay, let's give it a go. And it has taken the it hasn't taken the place, but it's higher on my priority list. Oh, we've got 6 people playing. Should we play Camel Up? No, do you know what I fancy? Do you know what I fancy? And again, he's probably not going to watch this in time, so it's okay. But I've given this to my other brother for Christmas because it was a decent price in the sale in game, and I played it with our parents in a month or 2 ago, and I said, oh, this is what we're getting Mark for Christmas, and my mum, your mum, they were she was a little bit overwhelmed. She's like, oh, there's lots of learning, there's lots of stuff. And it teaches badly, actually. It teaches badly, but it plays better than it does. And in the end, she won, actually, but having played some terrible goes. She was in the they call it the caboose, the last train,
Mm-hmm.
the last carriage of the train, and she shot into the air twice in a row. She was like, "I'm having a great time," just, and then me and my dad are fighting on the roof, and he's punching me, and but then she just mopped up and cleared all the loot, and she won. And they went, "Yeah, we'll play that again. That'll be fun." This honestly, it climbs nearly 100 places to the point that on Monday I received this. I have finally got the DeLorean that obviously goes with it because it's a nice cowboy theme. And if you've seen Back to the Future 3, you know exactly why this is in here. If you haven't seen Back to the Future 3, there's a few people in my church who've gone, "Why have you got a car for a cowboy game?" Well, there's a solution there. Watch Back to the Future, Back to the Future 2, and then Back to the Future 3. Good night, Colt Express 28.
Excellent. My 28 is probably the game we've talked about most that hasn't come up on either of our lists yet.
Okay, yeah.
And will come up on both. It is, the other exactly the same place as last year. 28, Seven Wonders Duel, which I actually no longer own. It went a couple of months ago in a trade, actually. And so I've had it for 5 years or so. Just really good. Table draft, little pyramid of cards. The bit that we always cite is that half of them are face up, half of them are face down. So you've got a face up row, face down row, face up, face down. And so some of the information. And so the choice of card isn't just you can sit and program out the whole game in one. And that's people's complaint of it, is that it almost plays itself. And I get the argument.
It's the glory of it.
Yeah, I get it, but it doesn't stop it being fun and it being, oh no, that's the exact card I didn't want you to have being flipped over. And so how can I manipulate it so you have to flip over cards so I get the full choice? And it's good. It's civilization themed. In theory, there are resources and stuff, and you are building 7 wonders between you in the game. So the theme's there. Seven Wonders, the base game, it will never appear on my list, but Seven Wonders Duel, every time it's just great fun, great tension. And you've mentioned it before, because you can win just by playing out the game and winning on points. You can win militarily, or there's a little set collection science aspect that you can go down, again in keeping with the theme. And they are all possible. I've still not seen science all that often. And military, once you've been battered by that once, you rarely lose to it again. But then you end up probably losing on points because you focus too much on not being beaten militarily. And so there's just a really good push and pull throughout the whole system. Seven Wonders Duel remains at number 28.
Very good. Well, my 28 last year, which slipped to 32 this year, was Lost Ruins of Arnak.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the reason for that slip is my number 27, which is Dune Imperium, which has a lot of
Carry on. That is a shock. Carry on.
Dune Imperium is very similar in lots of ways to Lost Ruins of Arnak. It's a deck builder with worker placement. And again, unlike I slammed Everdell before, I'll do it again. Unlike something like Everdell, where it feels unconnected, it feels very, very connected.
Yeah.
And I like it a little bit better than Lost Ruins. They're very similar. And I read Dune last year in anticipation of seeing the film. I then read the sequel. That was terrible. Don't do that. Don't waste your life. It's very short. Even still, don't waste your life. But yeah, so I got into the mythos of it a little bit, and so there's that. But actually, what I really like about it is that there's a war, as it is as appropriate, and there's this really interesting sort of player interaction element that just nudges it for me a little bit beyond Lost Ruins, because I like having that little bit of extra player interaction. I like the extra mechanic, again, that could have felt cumbersome, but very quickly was like, yeah, no, this is really, really good. A really simple sort of war structure, not dissimilar to something like Kemet or Scythe. You're spending war points, battle points, whatever, and then it all resets, and then you go again. And but yeah, with that side action of the battle side, nudges it that little bit higher. But why the shock?
Well, it's interesting hearing you say the last little bit because it's exactly the combat that I thought would have put you off.
I agree. But the friend had it. He brought it round. I sat and played it. I went, the combat initially, I was like, I don't really know what to do with that, even because it was out of the scope of deck builder, worker placement, both of which I had a
Yeah.
frame of reference
Yeah.
for. And I was like, I don't really understand how that works. It feels a bit convoluted, but I had some people just by mistake almost, just because it was a side action of a
Sure.
of the actions I wanted to do. I
Mm-hmm.
ended up with people. Oh no. Now I see how I can. Oh, I see how it doesn't actually detract. It's just again like the with both of those games, the
Mm-hmm.
worker placement is inherent in the deck building, and vice versa. So too is the war stuff, and you don't have to do it, but you probably should do it. But it's just one of a number of nicely folded in mechanics and thematic ties.
Fine. Grand. Um, my number 27, I've got listed as a new entry, but I feel like I talked about it. But whether it's just because, no, it was definitely on the list last year, and I've messed up the list somehow. My number 27 is New York Zoo.
Yeah, no, that was there.
Yeah. So I don't know where it's traveled up or down. Maybe it's held the same, and that's why, and I just did the notation wrong. Kind of my choice polyomino game. Uwe Rosenberg again, bizarrely. But it's a fun zoo game. We've had a couple of those now with Arc Nova. But it's a race game. It's whoever fills their map first, filled with these different shaped Tetris style pieces. And that's about it. There's breeding points because Uwe Rosenberg loves real animal interaction.
Human.
But if, yeah, that's about it. But it goes over very well with lots of different people, and that's the justification we've been using for a lot of this. Is how often am I going to think of this game to be the one that I pull off the shelf? And it's held its position as one that, compared to things like Patchwork, which used to be in my 20s, as just a very simple raw polyomino game. This is more complex. This is fiddlier. It's harder to teach, and yet he's done a great job where the theme makes the teach incredibly simple because it just makes sense that this would trigger that and that would happen in that order, and you'd only get so many of these, and once you filled that, you do this. Like it makes sense. It works. So it just continues to be fun, and you don't have to think about points. It's not Euro in that side for people that aren't used to those kind of games. When it's done, and you know immediately who's won. That's just how it works. So it just holds its place. It was on there somewhere. It's still there. New York Zoo number 27.
Right. Well, we've talked a little bit about, you've talked New York Zoo, I've talked on tour about the sort of justification of going, well, it gets played and that boosts its numbers. This one, my number 20, where are we? 6? Yep. 26, yes. Has dropped because of lack of plays. And it was number 11 last year. It was in the top 10 the year before that, and it has been number 1. You've talked about it already, and it's Root. Which breaks my heart because, like I said, former number 1, I sat down and played Root for the very first time, and I think I texted you and said, this is everything I love in board games.
Yeah.
It's not miniatures, it's wood. It's great art design that is carried through all the pieces. It's simple chits and stuff, but well produced. It's a bit of dice rolling. It's a bit of asymmetry. It's smart enough that it's into asymmetrical in a big sense, but also clever enough that it keeps it centralized with that race to 30 points, as we've said. It's everything I love in games, but can I get it to the table? I don't know the last time I played Root. It must have been years. It must have been years because it would have been pre-pandemic. I've not played it since the pandemic. I certainly didn't play it during the pandemic because it ain't no good for 2 players.
Yeah.
I haven't played this game in 3 years nearly, or more.
Yeah.
And so it just has to drop because it's just hard to get to the table. And I haven't bothered getting any expansions. I've got the different raccoon variants, but that's about it. Because I'm just not going to play them. And it breaks my heart. And maybe I should get the app version. I'm not very good at app-based anything, let alone board games. So I'd maybe get more plays out of it. But don't let me distract you by the fact that it's fallen that much. It doesn't mean it's any worse a game. It just means I'm not playing it at the moment. Yeah. And I'd really like to. So number 26 is Root.
Sad. From charming themes that draw you in to the driest of dries, second driest of dries, the ugliest of uglies, the Castles of Burgundy, my number 26. Mechanically beautiful, visually vile. And I almost spent a ridiculous amount of money on the Awakened Realms version that was on crowdfunding recently, because that looks good. And it shouldn't be that much money for a game to look, passably good.
Possible.
But compared to any other version that's existed, it was a beauty. But the gameplay is incredible. I know we've both played the card game version, which feels very similar. They managed to capture the feeling really well. And I've played a bunch of the board game, the original, the Castles of Burgundy, and it's just super satisfying. Played it 2, it's incredible. Played it 3, it's pretty good. Do not play it at 4. It's what I say every time. It will drag on forever and you'll hate everyone. But it's just really good. It's action selection with dice, which I like. I love an interesting action selection system, just to get different tiles to build out your little area, manse, cops, whatever the word might be, bit of land, and it just works. Everything just works really well, and it's usually relatively inexpensive unless you get one that actually looks half decent, in which case it's going to cost you too much money. But if you can get it, Castles of Burgundy, I do recommend it. 26.
I think it was 28. 30 actually on tour. You mentioned about it being actually harder than it looks, and that's definitely true. You get to the end of the game, which should be really simple because someone's rolled some dice and you've written down some numbers and drawn some lines. That should be easy. But you get to the end of it and go, that's what I did wrong. I can play again next time. And it's not one of those games, sometimes where you get to the end and go, I got that wrong. I never want to play it again because it was too hard to learn. Because it's quick, because it's easy, because it has a compulsiveness that you go, I can do better than that. It's not like, I don't know how I do better than that. You immediately go, I know, let's do that again because I can do better than that. My number 25, which is actually by the same publisher, Board Game Tables, is almost the direct opposite of this. This is QE, which is almost offensively hard to learn. It's really not. It's actually very easy to learn. It's not a roll and write. No, but it feels like it because you're ticking off score points. But it's a bidding game with the most ridiculous system because there's no cash currency, and so you write down over whatever you like, and so you can get into the hundreds of millions, the billions, the quadrillions if you like. But the person who spent the most money is going to go bust. So you probably won't do that. But you teach people, and it's like, oh man, I've got to learn about agriculture and it feels like it should be really hard, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then you play it and you go, well, this is really easy. This is really easy and really silly and really fun. And like I say, almost the opposite of On Tour, which looks like it should be easy, turns out to be hard. This looks like it should be hard, turns out to be very easy. Both are really fun. This one is, I think, just a step above. And one of my favorite games to pull out. It's got to be with the right crowd. But unlike Root, much easier to get to the table.
Yeah.
But not everyone's going to enjoy silly bidding. Some people will want to maths it out a little bit more. Some people would not really enjoy bidding at all. But if you've got people who are up for a bit of a laugh and have got like decent mental arithmetic, it's a winner.
They are also opposites for me in the sense that On Tour, you get told how to do and you're like, cool. And then very quickly you realize there's a huge catch. With QE, I'm sat there going, no, surely there's a catch. Surely there's something I have to get. There's something I need to. No, you just do it. Just be silly, have fun, and it's fun. It is incredibly straightforward. Another interesting action selection system from my number 25, dropped 2 places, same as Castle Burgundy, but that's just where they land. Underwater Cities. I no longer own one of the crunchier games that I've ever owned, but no longer, sadly, because again, just not getting it out to the table. But it was that combination of action selection with a card, but also a token, essentially worker placement type thing, You go to a space with your token, and you must play a card. If your card matches the color type of the space, you get to do both of them. Otherwise, you just get the space. And that stops it feeling like boring worker placement to me, and it becomes an interesting action selection thing, because sometimes you do need to trade off and just slough off a card to get the space that you needed to do the action that you need, just to get this next thing, because resources are super tight. And there's only so many production phases in the whole game, and so you have to build the things that you want. And then you've got a little map building thing with biomes that you need to connect with roads, and you can upgrade them, and nice Euro-y stuff, and tableau building on the side of it with different like immediate benefits, ongoing benefits, endgame scoring cards, like typical stuff that, as we keep saying, just sews together super well. And it's just a lot of fun. And the player aid, once you get over that it looks like somebody just put a colorful backdrop on an Excel sheet, like it is actually everything you need to know. And if you learn how to read it, it's incredible, but it looks intimidating, and the game looks intimidating, and it isn't really, but it is crunchier than most of the games on this list thus far. But around the same 25, it was 23 Underwater Cities.
You want to talk about an intimidating teach? This is a new one to my list, and no way a new game, but Race for the Galaxy, number 24. I know. You've been telling me to play it for ages. I've been telling you it looks horrible and ugly and hard to learn and all that kind of thing. And I'm right. But boy, is it good.
Yeah, it is.
Boy, is it good. And it plays fast and it plays smooth, and yeah, I confess, Race for the Galaxy is great. All right, I'm not going to argue with you anymore. Number 24. There you go.
My number 24 you talked about previously, and a spiritual crossover with Dune Imperium. This is Lost Ruins of Arnak.
Okay, yeah.
Again, that worker placement card action system. Sorry, not worker placement. Yes, worker placement deck building. My apologies. I got confused in Underwater Cities there for a second. And again, they're the fuel of the action, so the deck building matters, but it's slow. You can only get 1 or 2 cards per round if you're lucky, or if you're focused on that, rather, not lucky. And the fighting monsters is fun. It's a really cool aesthetic. We've already talked about it. I won't labor on it too much, but Lost Ruins of Arnak, great game, and a great production from CGE, a rare thing, not too rare, but better than I was expecting from them, certainly. 24.
The other thing that that Dune does well, it almost brings back, points cards from Dominion, the classic deck builder, and the clog up your hand, but you only need 10 points to win, so you want to get them when you can anyway. And that's something that Lost Ruins doesn't have, and it has as well as that having that like slightly better board presence, it also has that slightly better deck building stuff as well, for my money. So something that you just reminded me of then. All right, going back to the casualties from earlier, this has fallen from 14 to 23 for me. It fell quite considerably for you. This is Great Western Trail. Yes, I've owned it. Yes, I've owned the 2nd edition. Could I even get the 2nd edition played? No, I could not. Does my wife hate its very face? Yes, she does. Why am I playing with boring cows? She says. Why am I playing with dull brown cows? It's an excellent question, but you know what? It's an excellent game. It's around rondel. It's a point salad. But it's exceptional. And yeah, well, we didn't say earlier, a deck builder, much like Dune Imperium and Lost Ruins of Arnak. But again, does something different. Adds a board. It breaks my heart that it's and again, this is number 23. This is a great game, but is it hard to get to the table? And a bear of a teach. Bear of a teach.
Yeah.
Number 23.
My number 23 is your casualty, Raiders of the North Sea.
There you go.
Only down 2 places, was 21. Now, the thing that you said that I want to kind of flip the other side of is that you are no longer excited about it.
Yes,
I am excited about it. I'm in the next week or two, I'm gonna play games with somebody I've not played games with before, and they're relatively new, and they like the look of like Scythe and those kinds of games. And the one that came to mind was Raiders of the North Sea. This is a cool theme and a world that they can immerse themselves in. They don't have the hang-ups of worker placement. I don't have all of the expansions to know if you want to trade, so that I do have all the expansions. That's up to you. But but it's just something I think is simple enough and does play itself that little bit that actually it's a cool way into some of those things. Garfield games always are just interesting takes on what they do, and this kind of typifies that for me. And we've talked about Carl Ferrin, but Micho is wonderful artwork always. 23 Raiders of the North Sea.
Well, my number 22, the first of last year's top 10s. It was number 9 last year. It's fallen 13 places. And again, it's table time. Captain Sonar. Didn't notice, but I've 3 dry wipe marker games on Tour QE and now Captain Sonar on this list. Hell of a game. Brilliant game. 4v4. You all take on different roles: captain, first mate, radio operator, and an engineer, playing another 4 of exactly the same thing. The whole thing's played with dry white marker. It's like real-time battleship. It's some of the most fun I've ever had in any board gaming ever.
Yeah.
But again, you've just got to get the right 6, 7, 8 people, and that's an interesting mix. And I haven't played it in a year, and that tells you something. So lovely game. It has been top 10 for me for a good amount of time, but playtime drops it down to 22. Captain Sonar.
My number 22 is up 7 places, and I'm looking at it and I can't tell you why. I think just things dropped around it. I've never owned this physically, but played a lot of it physically and online. You've mentioned it already. This is Dominion. This is the kind of granddaddy deck builder. So this is the dry wipe and deck builder section.
It's true.
And like I mentioned with Sushi Go Party last time, it kind of comes with a selection of types of cards that can go in, and you just draw those out and then shove it all together and then play a game. You start with NAF cards and slowly work your way up, build more, either getting currency cards, the cards that actually do stuff, or as Rick said, then the dead points cards that kind of clog up your hand, but it's how you win. It also doesn't look very nice, particularly, but I just keep coming back to it. I just keep playing it, and I just keep enjoying it every time I do. Somehow it's up from 29 to 22. Dominion, it's great.
It is great. And it's my 21.
Yay!
I didn't want to interrupt you because I was like, I just will say yes and amen to all of that because, hey, it's good. And I also have never owned it. I'd quite like to, but it's always quite expensive. And just have liked it when I've played it. So granddaddy of the deck builders, Dominion 21.
Grand. So my 21, last one for this section, makes me a little sad because I've just traded it. Was 14 last year, so dropped 7 places, and its lack of play. And this kind of perfects what I talked about with Dice Masters, in that sometimes you just want a silly pulling out, see what happens. It's not a deck builder, it's not but it is a bag builder. This is the Quacks of Quedlinburg. Just great fun. It is just fun, and it's deeper than some of those other games because each of the types of ingredients, the little chits that you're throwing into a bag that you're then pulling out to fill up your potion or whatever it is supposed to be, also then has its own power. Either it triggers something, or it's a scoring thing, or does something to other people, or does something to your pot. And it's just silly. It's got a little bit of entry. It's not a brand new gamer game. That's its problem, because it presents as one, and much of it should be at that level. But because each of those ingredients has a different power, it just complexifies it enough that it's harder to find the exact right group for. It would work for many groups, but it's dropped because it didn't get played, because it just never quite felt appropriate for the people that I had. But it's great. If I, resources and space and time and friends permitting, I would get it again, no problem. But it was appropriate to trade when I did, because it hadn't been played, and can't keep things if you're not playing them, sadly. So that's my 21 and the 32-21 section of this list completed. Only 2 more to go. Oh, there are some upsets in the next one for me.
Yeah.
One giant up and a few, so many former top tens and one new game.
Yeah, I've only got one new game in the next section.
I've only got 2 new games left.
Same.
Cool. So we hope you join us for it. Great to have you back. I've been Dieter, my brother Rick, and I will just say toodaloo.